Okay, great.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Culturama. This is the third weekend, second day. It's Saturday, and we have a great event for you right now. I just want to go over. Let's talk about Zoom environment first. It is closed caption, so if you press the CC button on the bottom right, you'll get closed captioning. It's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. You can, if you want to raise your hand, usually the easiest way so that the instructor can see is you hit the reaction button, and then the bottom reaction is raise hand. If you are having a hard time talking, put it in the chat. That's great. Okay, what else? Okay, so up next after Bonnie, hang out for first Scott Creeley. He's going to talk about using Proust and the Proust questionnaire to generate work. And then we have Alexis Fancher talking about how to write about sex, and then she is our keynote speaker in the evening at 5 o'clock. So, but I am very excited about Bonnie. Bonnie is a person who changes lives, changed my life certainly. I came and I sat in on her workshop for many years and helped me really to focus what writing meant to me and how to write and how to develop plot and all sorts of things. And she's the author of I don't know how many books. It's
16 novels, 4 nonfiction books, and 36 co-authored books.
Wow, that's extraordinary. And they sell. They sell because they're really good. So, Bonnie Hearn Hill.
Well, I feel like we're sitting around my table here because I know so many of you. So I think because we don't have that many in the group today, I'd like to go, if you're comfortable, and I'd like to go around and just have you say your name and where you're from and what you write. And if you're not comfortable doing that, you can't get to your mic, that's okay too. But because I feel so close to so many of you here, I'd like to have you do that. Susan, could we start with you?
Sure, you can start with me. I'm just switching over to gallery here. Susan Jensen Sweeting. I live in Freeport, Bahamas, and I am working on my first novel. I'm as Bonnie said, I'm in university right now. Came back to school as an adult, doing a degree in creative writing and literature. And the more I do this degree, the more I'm becoming more and more impassioned to actually just do writing. Like that's all I want to do now. I do massage therapy. That's like my day job. I want to be a writer now. Like I want to be a writer full time. So I'm working on my first novel. I'm calling it women's literary fiction. Anyway. I love it. I love it. I've been working on it for many years, many years, and now I want to bring it to fruition. Sorry, that was long-winded.
That's okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Linda Hogan. I was a full-time professor in the biology department for 20 years. And since retiring, I've gone back to creative writing. I have a book that's coming out next July. And Bonnie, I just have to tell you, I had to give you an acknowledgement in the book because you were the first person to read the first chapter and give me positive encouragement.
That really touches me. You're a wonderful writer and it's a wonderful book. And I'm so proud of you. And if you were here right now, I would hug you. Daniel.
Thank you.
I'm excited for you. Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Kreins. I'm living now in Hudson, New York, and I'm a poet. And I just write a lot of. I don't even know if I could put a genre on what I write in prose. You know, I love fiction and creative nonfiction, but I also just like exploring new ways of thinking that are inspiring to people waking up.
Francis. So all going to get down to themes. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today about this.
Hi, I'm Frances Barilla. I am a full-time professor in the biology department at Mount Sac, and Linda used to be my colleague and I miss her dearly. But I mostly write poetry. I really like poetry, but I'm also finishing up my memoir. It's pretty much done, but I just trying to clean it up to get it out there and start promoting it. So that's the next step.
I know. And you're good. Those two, I don't know how you got in biology, but you're really good. Carrie?
I'm Carrie. I'm great, a little bit of everything. And I'm just kind of starting out. I'm in school right now.
And published.
Yeah.
And published. I keep seeing your work show up and it's like raindrops. I'm like, oh my gosh, got all this stuff happening. And that's a wonderful rule to remember, you guys. Here's the rule of publication. Once you get published, you're never unpublished again. So it's nice to get some little thing done so that the voice in your head doesn't say, hey, you stupid loser. It'll say it anyway, but it says different versions of that. And then Annette?
Yes, I'm sorry about the video.
That's okay. You're
the-
probably 3 o'clock in the morning or something.
No, it's 6, I'm in Denmark. It's 6 p.m., but it's a laptop issue. So I'm Annette. I've lived most of my adult life in Canada and the US, but moved back to Denmark a few years ago. I have handed over a memoir to Bonnie.
She's a wonderful writer.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
visual, very emotional.
I have published a children's book way back, and then there's the memoir that that's in Bonnie's hands, and I'm looking to write a fiction book next, but I feel stuck, probably for many reasons.
We're going to talk about fiction today. You'll be less stuck.
Thank you.
Nathan. That's okay with it.
Hi, I'm Nathan Weimer. I from Pomona, California. I write poetry. I'm taking classes. I'm on STAC right now, and I'm exploring different types of writing to see what I like.
Great. Well, you came to the right place, and you've got John, which you couldn't do better than John. Everybody who's ever heard me talk about writing has heard me talk about John. And Edna can't open her, I didn't see all
Mike.
that.
Mike.
Oh,
You
Mike.
can go to Mike.
Okay. Biddy?
Hi, I'm Biddy Martin, and I'm in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'm a true crime writer, and I'm looking at possibly writing a true crime about an Instagram influencer in Houston who was murdered last Thanksgiving. But oh, I just dread all the research and the interviewing and all of that. But that's probably going to be my next project.
That's going to be fun. You better let me work with you on it too.
Well, definitely.
Next one will be easier, but if you can get a blurb from Bill Clinton on your first book, I'm not worried about you. Steve?
Hey everyone. First off, Bonnie, I realize we've never actually spoken over video, so it's great to meet you. Steve Miller from.
Steve!
Yes. I wasn't sure if I was crashing a party. I don't know. You said
No, it's
I'm
wonderful
excited
to
to be-
meet you. You look just like you sound and like you write.
Oh, thank you. It's great to finally meet you and great to meet everyone. Like I said, my name's Steve Miller, pretty easy to remember. From New Jersey, well, originally from New York, live in New Jersey with my wife and dog. Working on my first novel. I consider it, I guess, maybe comedic fiction. I mean, I've always loved to make people laugh and been working on this book for a while. And as I mentioned to Bonnie when I first met her, if I can put something out in the world that continues to make people laugh, I'll be happy. So
It's awesome to meet you. I feel like we're having a party. I wish we were here. Thomas,
know.
tell us what you do.
Hello, Bonnie. I'm Tom Thomas. I live in Long Beach, California. I've written a lot of poetry since I was 18, so that's many years. Have published the last 10 years, quite a few books now, actually. I've written fiction nearly as long, and a lot of short stories, and I've actually finished a couple of novellas, and I'm very insecure about presenting it. John and I will one day sit and talk about the story that I gave him, but we keep on talking about life.
Well, I'll tell you what, because I like you guys so much, here's what I'm going to do. Anybody that wants to send me after this workshop up to 1,000 words, I will look at and comment on for you. How does that sound?
Nice.
That's awesome.
I'm just now retired, but I have a full-time job basically taking care of my wife, who's been in hospice and home health care. So,
Boy, and you have a cat?
and we have a cat. Yeah.
I just saw your cat. I almost showed you mine just now, but she's trying to stay out of, she knows already what the camera is and she doesn't want to be seen. So, so
Right.
wonderful. Thank you. So maybe fresh eyes would be a good thing. So if you want to send me up to 1,000 words, email me. It'll take me about a week to get back to you, maybe less, but I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, I'll worry the whole time.
Oh, please. Oh, please.
Oh, that's just my
Well, then
nature.
I'll try to do it in 24
No,
hours.
no, you can do it. You can take your time, but I'll be looking at the email every day.
Hi, Cindy. Good to see you.
Hi, I'm starstruck, sorry. I have collected some of your writing and I save it and read it when I need inspiration.
Oh,
I write short stories and I write short pieces of memoir. And I just have been doing that for years. And I don't really send it out anywhere, but I do want to start doing that. And I love writing. I'm really excited about it. It makes me happy. I feel addicted to it sometimes. I also am a caregiver for my 90-year-old mother. So sometimes I have to calm down and, I have to take care of her. There's lots of stuff to do. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I wrote a half a screenplay. I've written a newspaper article that led to a producer finding inspiration in it, and they are making a movie, a documentary, and they're going to let me be a little character in part of it, like a little animated character.
Oh, very exciting.
Nothing big, but I did find some historic. Anyways, that's it.
Okay,
I wrote a
Donna,
children's book.
let's move on to Donna because I want to get
Thank you.
started.
No problem.
Okay, Donna from California Inland Empire, working on a character-driven novel. Absolutely. Set locally in 1915. Ooh, historicals. I love historicals. And then I don't know if I have your name pronounced correctly. Do you know, John? Is it Heba?
Yeah, Heba, but she says she's not able to connect with the microphone.
Okay, that's okay. You may want to share a little bit about yourself. Maybe you can write us a note or something, but we're going to talk about theme today. We're going to talk about theme both in fiction and nonfiction, primarily in fiction, because your theme in nonfiction is much more easy to find. Usually you can find your theme in nonfiction on your first draft. Fiction, it's a little more difficult. And why do you think theme is important? Tell me why. And one of the reasons I wanted you to introduce yourselves is so that we're much more informal. I like informal. I wish you were here in my house around my table. I could almost fit you all around this table, as John and Annie know. So I just want you to feel free to speak out if you're comfortable doing that. So it's like a real workshop. Why do you think theme is so important, say, to fiction? When you read a story and write a story, why is your theme so important?
Because it keeps you on track throughout the whole piece, like you going back to your theme and make sure you're staying on track with the whole piece.
It unifies you, it unifies what you're writing, doesn't it? It gives you a unity. We talk about unity a lot. And theme certainly is one of the things. And how would you define theme? Somebody want to give me a definition? How would you define theme? Otherwise, you're going to force me to call on John. If nobody wants to say, John, how would you define theme?
Oh, Linda had her hand up.
Oh, Linda, I didn't see you. Please just interrupt me, like.
Okay. I had a thought and now it's just gone out of my head, but basically it's the reason for being. It's what you hope to impart about life to your readers.
Oh, well put. It's the overall idea, isn't it? It's the overall idea. So if you don't have a theme, what do you have? What do you have?
Anecdotes.
Yeah, a bunch of mismatch, maybe a bunch of unconnected events.
And when we start out writing something, that might be what we have. Sometimes we have to get, a lot of times with me, at least, I have to get the thing down to figure out what it is I'm trying to say. I wrote a story the other day, well, the other week, Carrie, you've seen it, where I really didn't know what I was trying to say till I wrote the last line. And then I thought, oh, this is about a man belittling a woman. And a friend of mine had told me that when she got married, she was very, very slender. She'd lost a lot of weight. She looked really good. And right after they got married, her husband told her if she lost 5 pounds, she'd be perfect. And that really stuck with me. I thought, he's carving her away. Pretty soon there won't be anything left but her mouth. And that's probably what he really hates anyway. So I wrote the story about a person saying that to a character, and then he didn't like something else about her, and she starts slicing. It's sort of magical. It's not literal, but she sort of chops pieces of herself off until there's nothing left but her mouth. And then he says that's the problem all the time. And then she realizes there's only one way to start putting herself back together. She goes for his eyes. And just like that, I realized what the story was about. And we'll see what happens with it. I just sent it out some places. It's flash fiction. It's not very long. It's maybe 300 something or maybe 400 words. So a lot of times we don't know, do we? Until we actually, and one thing I want to tell you today, I'm going to tell you some things that sound like rules. I want you to know that there's no such thing as a hard, fast rule. I can tell you something. I can say most of the time, this is what you're supposed to do. Susan, in your case, it would be point of view. I would say some things to you about point of view and how important it is to be in one character's head. But ultimately, you have to decide if it works or not for what you're doing. So when I talk about rules, there are things that work for me. And if you hear one little thing that I say that works for you, that's wonderful. If it's one little thing. Chris Poe and I, some of you know Christopher Allen Poe, who's a very good friend of mine. He's like my son. He and I were speaking to a Romance Writers of America group about, I think we were talking about how to write a scene. And there was a woman there in her 80s, really serious. She wrote, what are those romances? I'm not well versed on romance, where there are dukes and stuff in them.
Oh, like period romance.
Yeah, they have a name. I can't think of them. But anyway, Regencies. So so she she'd really worked hard and she couldn't get it and she couldn't get it. And in our workshop, there was one little thing we said about scene goal, which we'll get to. Actually, it was about story question, I think. And she said it made, all of a sudden, everything clicked. And I think she's sold her 3rd book by now. And it was that one little thing. She was a good writer, because really most people who write are good writers, or they wouldn't want to write. I mean, I don't want to be a brain surgeon. You know, I think that we're led to what we're good at, but then it's a matter of art and craft, right? Art and craft. So when we think about theme, here, I made some notes here, that the story has to stand on its own, right? I mean, in the old days, we had fables, right? And at the end of the fable, we had our theme, right? But we don't do that today, do we? Our theme is inherent in what we write. And I think that if we are aware of our life themes, what we believe, I believe that comes across in our stories. I believe that comes across in our stories. I think that's what came across when I wrote the little flash fiction piece. It was one of my themes is what goes around comes around. I really believe that. And so I think that pops up, you know. I know somebody who writes kind of devil take all themes. That's not who I am. I don't believe devil take all, and I don't like devil take all stories, no matter how well written they are. I knew a guy once who was a horror writer, And he wrote Devil Take All horror novels, kind of paperbacky, kind of back, I don't know, it was back pre-computer. And I didn't like what he wrote. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I've learned a lot from you. I'm going to put you in my next book. And he put me in this book. He said, I need a strong woman character. I'm going to put you in the book. And in the last chapter, he turned me to stone. So here's a strong woman character named Bonnie through this whole book. At the end, she gets turned to stone. So that's not my favorite kind of book, but that was his life thing. He had a very good career. He was sort of like a Dean Koontz type person, not that successful, pretty successful. He was the first published writer I ever knew. So what I want us to start with is, everybody have something they can write with. I'm going to give you about a few minutes here. Come here, Evie. I want you to meet my friends. Come on, Evie. Here, come on. Here's Evie. Here's your Uncle John. Here's little Evie.
Oh, oh.
Yeah, those are your friends. Those are your new friends. You got to learn not to bite on books, though, because there are a lot of books around here. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to pretend, here, Evie, have some food, that a Martian has come down and asked you for advice about how things are down here. How do things work here? I just told you one of mine. Now, I would say to a Martian, well, what goes around comes around. I would say to the Martian, well, even at the bottom of Pandora's box, there was hope. I might say to the Martian, be careful what you ask for. So I want you to take a few minutes and write down maybe at least 4 things that you might tell this Martian. And then we're going to share it. Just put up your hand when you finish so I know you're done. Okay. That's a good question, huh? Is everybody about there? Okay. Anybody need more time? Are you good? Okay. So give me some of your ideas. Let's hear from the volunteers. I'm not going to call anybody except John here. Okay, let's start with John. John, tell me some of yours.
I really had just one, but it's kind of a longer one. When I told the alien is rumination is dangerous. You need to be careful to see through a lens that's honest rather than the lens of self-doubt, because we are always meditating, and it's better not to meditate on the lies you tell about yourself.
Read me that again.
The rumination is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be careful to see through a lens that's honest rather than a lens of self-doubt, because we're always meditating, and it's better not to meditate on lies you tell about yourself.
That's true. That's good advice to that Martian. That's good advice. Who wants to read one for me? Okay, Tom.
I have 3 so far.
Okay.
You have to be able to breathe the air here, oxygen and nitrogen. The water is abundant, necessary for life. And then you're different, so people won't trust you.
Ooh, I love your last one. I love your last one. That could almost be the beginning of a story, you know that? That could almost be the beginning of a story. Oh, that's wonderful. Let's hear another one. Who wants to share?
People are raising their hands virtually, so Francis.
Oh, I can't see them. I see them now. I see them now. Okay, we're gonna go start with Francis.
I did kind of stereotypical phrases. Everything is connected. And with that, there's no free lunch.
Good.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and time flies too quickly.
Every one of those probably shows up in your work. Those, I'll tell you something else. The more you think about your life themes, the more you don't have to worry about your story themes, because your life themes come out in what you write. You almost can't help it because it's what you believe. It's like when I was writing a lot of genre fiction, which I didn't like doing, but it got me out of a horrible day job. I got a 6-book deal that changed my life and got me out of the newspaper back before newspapers went the way of the goose. And I was having to write on tight deadlines for a lot of money. So it sounds like poor me, first world problem, but it really was kind of a strange period. And I would try to make a character do something and that character wouldn't do it. Have you ever had that happen to you? The character wouldn't do it because it wasn't who I was. It wasn't what I believed. And so I think the more aware we are of these things, the more they come out in our writing. Linda, you have your hand up.
Yes, I have two. The evil ones will have you believe that you are evil too.
Oh,
And you may get chances at many things, but only one chance at each thing.
okay. I just want to go have coffee and wine with you right now. I just want to go listen to you talk all day.
Those are really, can you read those again? Those are really great.
Those are so good. You just did this just now.
The evil ones will have you believe you are evil too. You may get chances at many things, but only one chance at each thing.
I hope you write something with each of those lines in it. I do. Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, I've got a few. I thought we were telling, the Martian was asking what's happening on Earth. So I wrote, humans take water for granted. There's no water on Mars. And most people judge worth by what they own. And we're pretty short compared to Martians, so you'll likely get a lot of attention.
Cindy?
I wrote, love is everything. Laugh always about everything. Adventure, be wild. We have many borders. You have no borders. Our earth is yours. Mi casa es su casa.
You guys, it's so wonderful. You see why writing is so wonderful. Here we all do the same thing, but look what we bring to the table. Steve, I'm eager to hear yours.
Oh, no. I put, remember the golden rule. Shoulda, coulda, woulda are the 3 worst words in the English language. Take joy in the little things, and check out Lombardi's Pizza.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Susan?
I wrote 2. I wrote, you have to give love to get love, but don't focus on getting love. It will come as you give love. And then I have, the truth will set you free. Truthfulness is the foundation of all things.
Truth will set you free is one of mine too. It shows up a lot. And I'm not sure why that is, except that that maybe because of all the work I do with writers, so many of us are repressed or were, and maybe that's part of why we write. Annette, I didn't say your name right before. Say it right for me this time.
Annetta.
Annetta, it's the E at the end.
Yeah, it's like with an A at the end.
Yes,
instead of an
Annetta.
E.
Read me yours. I bet yours are great.
I wrote one answering, you asked how does things work down there? They don't, not currently. Things are in the process of breaking down all around the world in various ways. But after a storm, the sun always appears sooner or later. Just wait.
That's appropriate to where I live right now. I'll tell you, with the smoke damage we've had down here. John, as much as I miss you and Annie, I'm glad you haven't, well, you can tell my voice. You know, it's been really bad. It's not bad today, but every day, I never thought my life would be that every day I'd have to get up and the first thing I have to do is check to see what the air quality is. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Nathan.
Well, I wrote, you got to learn from mistakes or else you have to take the class again. Measure twice, cut once is a pretty big thing.
What, read
Trust
the
us.
second one again? I didn't hear you.
Oh, measure twice, cut once is a pretty big thing. Trust is hard to build, easy to break. And I'm a pessimist because of intelligence. I'm an optimist because of courage.
So good. You have a real, your voice, I don't mean your speaking voice, your voice on the page is very distinctive. It's very distinctive. It kind of reminds me, well, Steve, yours is too. It's if I read something you wrote, I would know you wrote it. And that's true of John Branningham. If I read something John Branningham writes, you don't have to tell me it's John Branningham's. I don't care if it's a poem, if it's fiction, if it's a wonderful novel, which you and I have to put our heads together and talk about, John. You can tell there's a lot of distinction there. Did I miss anybody just because I'm so bad at, I think I called on everybody.
Donna put something in the chat.
Okay, I don't see it.
I can read it.
Okay, do help me because my screen's really small. I'm on my laptop.
Everything has a price and a cost. Non-action is inaction, or an action, I should say. Nothing stays the same.
Oh, nice. Can you guys see how just talking about this makes you more aware of what you think about things and how that's going to show up in your work? Does that make sense to you? So when let's talk about fiction, because fiction, we create a character, and a lot of what, Andrew, where did you come from? We got more people here now, huh? Hello, you sneaked in on me. So you didn't have to do the exercise, huh?
No, I was having breakfast in a existential argument about the state of the world with my grandma this morning.
Oh, well, okay. We're talking about themes and about the life themes, because your life themes will show up in your picture, in your fiction. Tell me this, Andrew. If a Martian came down to Earth right now and asked you how things worked in the world and ask you what you believed in, what would you say?
Power is everything.
Okay. Does that show up in your work, do you think?
Oh, probably, yeah. John says
yes. John's with a very
yes.
definite nod there.
Andrew, would you repeat that, please?
Power is everything. I didn't even have to write it down. It just came out of my face.
You see, that's why you got to be late to class, you sneaky thing. So, okay, so let's look at character. When we create character, a fictional character, this is the biggest problem I think I see with fiction writers, is character and theme. My best friend is a wonderful nonfiction writer. She's best-selling author. She's funny. She's good. She's tried desperately from the time she took the first class from me in the mid-90s. And this is a very successful writer now. She's tried to write fiction and she's failed considerably every single time. And the reason she's failed until now, I'm happy to say there's a happy ending to this story, John. She has not created characters. She has created judgmental, feel sorry for themselves, sad boy characters. So so her stories don't work because her characters don't work and because there's no theme. They're very plot driven. Well, recently we had a conversation about this class and about theme. And I said, what do you think your life theme is? What do you care about? And she said, well, my mother died when I was 15. I was always looking for family. I said, wow, why don't you let that be a theme? Why couldn't family be in a search for family? Because we either create our own families because we reject the family we had. We look for families, but family is this universal theme, isn't it? How do we feel about family? And so she was telling me about her first job working for the mafia. She was a switchboard operator at she calls it Mafia Motors. It was a auto dealership owned by organized crime. She was 17 years old. And she loved these people, even though they were mafia. And I said, well, what if they weren't mafia? What if they were, you like to write supernatural. What if they were vampires? And then we started thinking about a story. And she wrote a story that I promise you, I had her send it to Ellery Queen, to the editor that I worked with at Ellery Queen magazine, because I know she's going to sell this story. It is just great. It's about this young woman working for what she thinks is like family dealership, and somebody threatens the dealership and she does this heroic thing to save her quote family, even though she knows they're vampires. Isn't that great? And the reason it works, the reason it isn't just a bite you in the neck stupid plot driven story, is the theme of family. So like Andrew, you could take your theme of power and apply it to anything. Apply it to breakfast, which you probably did. But because I'm sure you got the biscuits and she got the deviled eggs, right? But when we create a character, we have to think about not only what that character wants, but what that character needs. So let's see hands in the air. How many of you ever created a fictional character? Okay. So when you do, tell me this, what do you think, this is a good one, what do you think the most important qualities of a fictional character are?
We have 2 electronic hands up.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. I'm gonna have to start looking. I look in your guys' eyes. I don't see those hands up there. Susan, what do you think? And then we'll go to Steve.
So I actually had my hand up because I had a question, but I can speak to what you.
I'll answer your question.
Should I ask my question first? It was
Yes.
maybe you first started out by saying your friend was writing very plot driven stories with no theme. So I just wanted you to talk just for a minute about like the difference between plot and theme.
About plot and theme. Okay, plot is just one thing happens and then another thing happens. What's the example that we always use, John? The king died and then the queen died. And who gives that example? Carrie, you would know this too. In one of the writing books, I want to say, is it John Gardner that talks about that? I think it is.
Yeah.
The king died and then the queen died. That's a plot.
Mm-hmm.
The king died and then the queen died of grief.
Yeah, that's a theme.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more character driven. Plot is this happened. Plot is, first of all the plots have been used. Plots are really not interesting. And that was really hard for me when I was writing a lot of genre fiction, because I would think, okay, I've got to bring this thing alive with character, because any plot I come up with, and because I was interested in social justice, I always wanted a social justice theme, because that's one of my main passions is social justice. So I'd write, say, a thriller about something, but I would have the foster care system in California, or quote, gay conversion camps, or older man, younger woman, sexual attraction. That kind of stuff would always be embedded in there, so that I had more, well, to entertain myself as much as anything else, but to get the book written. So does that answer your question? I call it plotting.
Yeah.
It would be like a plot. Usually I'll say this to my friend, that's too plotty. like she'll say, oh, I want to write a story about whatever. Or a lot of times people who write paranormal get really plotty, or crime or genre fiction in general. And that's fine. They're, oh, hello, Bitsy. Hi, Bitsy. There's Uncle John. Do you miss him? Say hi to Uncle John, Bitsy. So here we go. Yeah, I know you don't like the cat. You don't like the kitten. I get that. Bitsy's still getting adjusted to her new sister. So, and that's a plot. So character-driven plot. So here's what I want to say about that. Your story is driven by, not by your theme. That comes later where you figure out your theme. Your story, when you first sit down to write it, is driven by usually by your protagonist's main goal.
Right.
That's what your character wants. And if you can figure out what your character wants, then you turn it into a yes, no question. Many people get mixed up about what the character wants versus what the character needs. So they get confused about the external yes, no story question, which is like, will he find the killer? Will she marry the prince? Will Bitsy learn to like her sister? Those are all external scene goals. The internal, what the character needs goal is the hole in the character's life. And that's very important to make the reader care, but that is not what drives the story. The story question, what the character wants, drives the story. The character's emotion drives the goal. Does that make sense? And the character's emotion is based on something in the past. What drives that character to want to do this? You know, what drives Clarice in Silence of the Lambs? You know, she does some amazing things. She's driven to save this one woman's life. So do you find that helpful, Susan?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, does that make sense? I know how to look for your hands now. So if you have a question, I'm going to get to you in a second, Steve.
Right.
So okay, where's Steve? Steve, your question went away.
Oh yeah, I had raised it initially when you said who writing a fictional character, so I just put it down. I don't have a question, so I just put it down.
Okay, but what were you going to say? Oh, I see. That was
Oh, but I was going to say, I mean, I think you said it beautifully, but one thing that I would add, at least for me, is that writing comedic fiction, and I think this goes back to when I had done improv, is that when you create a character, no matter how ludicrous that character is or what you choose to make that character about, if that's that character's, let's say, deal, then you need to ground it as realistically as possible. So just trying to, if your character is like a kleptomaniac, a clown who's a kleptomaniac who also wants to be a mime, right? Like, it's a ridiculous idea, but what would that really look like if that's what that character wanted? So don't write it from a place of like almost as a joke, but this is what that character's goal is. So what would that look like?
You bring up a really important point, and that goes back to theme. And that goes back to respecting your character and not having your character, no matter how ridiculous that is, and it applies to villains. It applies to villains. When you create a villain, most people don't get up in the morning, look at themselves in the mirror and say, boy, I'm a rotten SOB, and I'm going to go screw up someone's life today. That's not how villains look at themselves. You know, there are probably people other than John Branningham in this room that somebody doesn't like. And other than John Branningham, because everybody loves John Branningham, but even Bitsy. But so you have to take it from, I think what you're saying is you have to take it from where the character is, right? You have to take it from, if this is what we're writing, if we really are, well, I was writing a story about a woman who cuts herself up so nothing's left but her mouth. So That's not real, but it has to be real. That woman has to be real when I write her. She has to be as real to me as I am. And until we get there, we're writing caricature. And so where the theme comes in is when we look at our story. So say we have a story and it's driven by the yes/no goal, which most stories are. Some stories are vignettes, especially flash, but even then I think we can usually find a story question many, many times. And that is, what does your main character want externally in this story? It could be that the character, what did Vonnegut say, John? I'm paraphrasing. Your character has to want something on every page, even if it's just a glass of water or a drink of water, maybe, which isn't a bad idea. So that character what that character wants. If your character doesn't want anything, it's really, really difficult to make that story work, because the character's not motivated to do anything. So try to, you want to have, give me some examples of something a character might want in a story. Let's see some hands. I know how to look for them now.
To be loved. The character wants to be loved.
Okay, wants to be loved. Wants to be loved by an individual person. So if that's the quest of that story, the last page can't be there was a hurricane, because you have to answer that question. Carrie, you had a hand up, honey.
That's what I was gonna say.
Oh, okay. And then that's another thing. Let's look at what are some of the themes. Love is certainly a thing. Oh, Tom, sweet kitty. Sweet kitty. Luna. Hey, Luna, you want a treat?
My example is Luna wants me.
Well, maybe you want to be wanted. So, oh, that's my favorite. Black cats are my favorite cat. Or that's a gray kitty, huh?
He's a Russian blue.
Oh,
sorry.
My new baby's black. Bitsy's gray and white. Okay, but so what are some of the themes? Let's talk about themes, general themes. Love. Love is a really important theme. And our approach to it then, our life theme would be what? Love is. And that would be the theme of the story, right? In my story that I just finished, love is not such a good thing, love is sacrificing parts of yourself until you realize the price. That's not necessarily what I believe about love in my own life. Yes, Francis. See, John, I did it. And I see Carrie.
Good job. Security, I think, security is something a character would want, some safety and security from life.
And one of the things Jack Bickham said, and I'm not a fan of Jack Bickham's books, but I learned how to write fiction by reading Jack Bickham's books. And many years ago, and I understood how to write. I hadn't read Aristotle enough to know that that's all he was doing. But one of the things he said was everybody would die for their self-image. Their self-image. What do you think you are? And then what do you think your character is? What does your character think he is? And put him in a situation where his self-image is threatened. Like, say, John Branningham thinks he's a good person, because he is. Put him in a situation where that image of himself as a good person is threatened. Oh my goodness. Carrie sees herself as a good mom. Put herself in a situation where that is threatened, and she'll kill you. So, Carrie, you have your hand up. Carrie, you had your hand up, honey.
Okay, I was gonna say survival.
Survival. Yeah, that's a major theme. That's a major theme. What else? Give me some other themes, you guys. This is important because I'm going to have you do a free write-up.
Forgiveness is one. Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Yeah. Well, how do we deal with forgiveness? And how do we deal with pain? How do we deal? I went online and I found this list of themes, and it was ridiculous. I thought, no wonder people can't learn to write on the internet, because they were saying, here are the themes for horror stories. Here are the themes for mystery stories. Here are morality stories. And I thought, no, themes are themes. It doesn't matter what your genre is. And I know that from having written, I don't know how many suspense novels. And then it says Westerns explore things like freedom, courage, and right versus wrong. Really? You can't explore that. I mean, those are great themes, but you can't explore that in a romance, or you can't express that, you know. That's ridiculous. So, so we have to have the character's main goal in the story. And then we have to have the whole in the character's life. Why? We have to have the page turning part. That's what the character wants. The whole in the character's life is what makes us care. And that's what gets us out of plotty. We're not plotty when we can do that. So
Can a character have a want that is also a need? Like, for example, a lot of Americans want more because they think that's going to fulfill them. And what they need is fulfillment, but what they want is more.
So
more
I
stuff,
think you could say, okay, that you're trying to show, see, your theme is to show that we want things when really what we need is connection. I'm putting your theme into words. Then I would say that I would show a character, maybe it's a love story, and maybe the character chooses the more mercenary. I mean, that's to say that the more mercenary character is a bad person, of course, is cliche. But maybe the person chooses a career, or maybe and that's cliche too, because there's nothing wrong with choosing your career, said the person who does it every day of her life. So maybe the person does something that goes against their self-image. Maybe they do something, they become a hitman, or they rob a bank. John has a fabulous novel where the character does rob banks, but not because he's mercenary. He's robbing banks to try to feel. See, John, I still remember that story after all this time. So maybe your character, the hole in your life is reflected by what you choose, and our themes are reflected by what the whole we choose for our character. So in your story, Daniel, you go by Dan or Daniel?
Either one. Daniel,
what do you like?
Daniel usually, yes.
Okay, Daniel. You look like a Daniel. So so in your story, what could it be? It could be that the character has to make a decision that where this value thing, maybe it's a job, maybe it's doing something really distasteful, maybe it's marrying for money, which must be dreadful, and has to make that choice. And then we have the character arc. I'd like to talk about character arc. Have any of you heard that term before? You have heard that before. I know you have, Carrie. And who can, Steve, you probably have too, because you get it. Who can define character arc for me? You can raise your hands. I know how to do this. Who can define character arc? Because it's really, Carrie, you raised your hand.
The character starts out with something like wrong with them, basically, and then they have to grow and become a better person throughout the story. Not necessarily a better person, but they have to develop some sort of like they just have to grow.
It's more of an arc Because what you're saying, I know what you're saying, the character has a hole
Mhm.
in his or her life. And the hole isn't, I always warn people to avoid the suddenly she realized syndrome. That is, character arc. Oh my gosh, suddenly I realized A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and now everything's okay. Because everything is never going to be okay. So the character arc is more a realization, right? And a moment of internal change. It's where because of the events that have happened, and because of the let's say it's a basic quest story. So the character enters into this thing unwillingly, is forced into this action. And motivated by the hole in the character's life. Carrie, where'd you go? Okay. So I lost Carrie there. So through this struggle and through this this journey, this quest, the character changes. It doesn't mean the character heals 100%, but it means that the character is not the same person who started this journey. There's more self-awareness, and often there is more healing. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody?
You reminded me of one of my favorite Red Skelton little skits where he's on the stage, he's like the bum, and he's like, he's balancing a chair on his nose and juggling and running a ring around his foot, 1 foot in the air, and he's just getting exhausted. And finally he just like can't do it anymore. He drops his hands, takes out his handkerchief, wipes his brow, and looks up, and all this stuff is still going around, still happening, all without him doing anything.
I never saw
And then he looks at it and kind of goes, huh, finishes resting, and then gets back in position and gets all stressed out again. Just like that's kind of a theme or a character arc, wouldn't you say, where he discovers something about himself and then goes back with a little more understanding to doing the same thing he was doing in the first place.
I have one of my early novels. Had a good friend who was hearing impaired, and she worked at the newspaper. She was brilliant. I say was, she still is alive. She's just a different person now. But at that time she was hearing impaired, and she didn't want people to know it because she didn't want special treatment. She'd come from a situation where she'd been treated poorly. And I knew it because we became friends. I mentored her. She was a brilliant woman. And and so I based one of my early novels on her, on a hearing impaired reporter who read lips, but nobody knew it. And she moves to San Francisco at the beginning and feels very, very out of place. And as it turns out, the woman that was going to be a roommate has disappeared. And so here she is, hearing impaired in San Francisco, trying to find this reporter who's disappeared. And at the end of the book, what I like to put the character arc at the end. There's different places to put it. You can put it right before the climax, right after the climax. For me, the character arc usually has to do with the internal problem. So I tend to put it really right at the end of the book. And at the end of the book, she realized, she says to the cab driver says something to her, if she lives here or something, or if she's from here. And she says yes. And she says to herself, and that's the truth. She realized she's become part of this city. She's become part of this newspaper. She's gone through all this horrible stuff, and it's a pretty gritty book. I mean, she goes through some bad stuff. And I think that when you deal with the character arc, and when you deal with the hole in the character's life, that's really where your theme comes in. I mean, you guys gave some amazing themes today, and I'm going to have you do a free right now. I wanted you to take something from here of yourself, and you can do whatever you like with it. But I'd like to give that to you right now. I'd like to give you, normally I don't do free writes in class. I told John I wasn't going to do one in here. But the more I think about it, especially because of the level of what you're bringing in here, I think it would be a good thing for you while we're in this moment to have something. So I'm going to take 10 minutes, which I never do. And I'm going to give you an exercise that we call the 10,000 word sentence. Have any of you ever done this? Okay, you haven't done it, Carrie? I'm surprised I haven't told you that. And what this is, it's not really 10,000 words. Andrew, I never made you do this, did I? All I told you was something about character, which you shared with Carrie. And what's that? What did I teach you about character?
Oh gosh, I put on the spot like that. My mind just goes.
What did I?
It was actually the other Andrew that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I always thought it was this Andrew.
No, it was the other Andrew, but I'll share it. It was that nobody is interesting enough to be the protagonist in their own novel, and you always got to make up a fictional protagonist.
Yeah, and that's important too, because the more you create a fictional protagonist, the more your themes will come through. If you're writing yourself as the protagonist, your themes won't come through because you're justifying and you're trying to do all these things we do to feel good about ourselves. My first novel, which I'm thrilled to tell you was never published, was myself. It was myself. And it won a major writing award. And the only criticism that I got on it was the person said to me, one of the judges, your main character isn't very likable. I don't understand why all these men keep falling in love with her. Well, I'm happy to say that that book was never published. I would be embarrassed. I would have to not be here. I would have to teach this class with a paper bag over my head. So you don't want yourself as a main character, as tempting as it is. You can take a little part of yourself. You can take some of your history, but I don't think I've ever, John, have I ever written a character that's like me? I don't think so.
No, I can't think of any.
My last book, the River book, what was that called? The River Below, was the closest to me I've ever written. And the character wasn't me. She was much better than I am, but I was very worried about my best friend. She was a caregiver to a husband who was very ill, and it wasn't a good marriage to start with. And she was forgetting things. She was forgetting appointments. She was forgetting names. And here I am trying to save the world. And I live 3 houses down from her. And I couldn't help her. I get emotional thinking about it. So I did what every good writer does. I wrote a novel about a character, a scientist, which I am not. And I made the scientist very different than I am. But the main problem was her best friend was forgetting things and began thinking she saw a girl on the river, because this is a suspense novel, right? And so but it's the closest I've ever come to writing a non-suspense novel. And it was based very much on my love for my friend. And I'm happy to say she's fine today, but that was a rough period. And later I told her, I said, I wonder if I wrote that book because of us. And you know what she said? She said, of course you did. I said, really? She said, of course you did. And it didn't occur to me while I was writing it so much, because I made the character so much not like me. But that was my life theme right then, was how can we help the people we love most? How do we save? Here we are where I am living, trying to save the river, trying to save the environment. And in my story, that's what they're trying to do, trying to save, in my case, downtown Fresno, in the town where I live, that's destroying its downtown. And then if you're doing all that, and then how do you help the people you love most? How do you save them? So that book really is about people trying to save things and ultimately trying to save each other. But I didn't know, I didn't make it Bonnie and Hazel. You know, the two women are not my best friend and me. So what I want to do for you now is I'm going to give you the 10,000 word sentence. And it's not really 10,000 words. The reason it's called that is because when you do this free write, there's one thing you're not going to be able to do, and that is punctuate. You're not going to be able to use period. Have you done this, Tom, before? You're nodding. Have you done it before?
No, but I get it.
Yeah, because what it forces you to do is pull it up out of yourself. If you're not left braining it, you've done it, John, I think, haven't you? And
Yeah, I make all my students do it too.
oh, good, good. I think it originally was a Bradbury exercise. I think it was way back in the day. I think he's the one who started it. It forces you to pull your emotion out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read you some themes. And you can also take one of the themes that we did earlier. And I want you to write it down. So survival, death, fear, safety, good versus evil, friendship, that's what my last book was about, romance, connection, justice, injustice, safety, selfishness. I think I said survival, courage, or any of the themes that you wrote, that you came up with, and some of them are great ones. I want you to write one of those down right now. Just write it down. And then I'm going to give you 10 minutes, and I want you to write whatever you feel about that theme. Just start writing. And the only rule in this 10 minutes is that you can't use any punctuation at all, no periods, no anything. It's you throw in an and or a but. Do you have any questions? Does this make sense to you? Everybody, I don't see those little hands up. Okay. John, you want to be my timekeeper? Okay, John's going to be the time. Oh, you know what? I'll be the timekeeper. And then if John wants to do it too, yeah, John, you do enough. Let me get my time. In fact, Alexa, set timer for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay, go. This might answer your question. According to Wikipedia. Alexa, stop. Okay. What's that? "16 seconds." Alexa, stop. Okay. So what did you think? What'd you get? You get something good? Let's hear your comments. Oh, wow. Now, see, you didn't know you were going to get that today, did you, Susan? So let's hear your comments. What are your thoughts? What'd you get? I don't see those hands going up. Go ahead, Cindy.
I got the beginning of a romance story.
Well, that's pretty good.
It was really fun.
That is so fabulous. What did you find by not punctuating? What did that do for you?
It was so freeing because I kept thinking I had to punctuate, but then I stopped and I was like, no, just keep going. And I wanted to put he said and then comma, and I was like, no, just keep going. It doesn't matter because we're just doing that. So I just had to keep telling me, and then more and more came. It was freeing.
It gets everything out of the way, and it gets you on the page, which, because all that judgment, all that Bonnie's going to put a period there or a comma or think I'm stupid or all that stuff just goes away. And it's like, I have a good friend, really good friend, Dennis Lewis, who's a psychologist. And he always says that we write with the same part of the brain that we dream with. And so really, when you do this, you're kind of dreaming on paper. And when we dream, what are we trying to do? We're trying to express ourselves and we're trying to heal. So if I have one thing in a class where somebody says they got the beginning of a story, I think it was worth the time. It makes me so happy because that's where it all starts. Do I see any other hands? What? Yes, Biddy. I can't, honey, you have to put your mic on.
I have the beginning of a rewrite of a book that I've already written that I wrote before I wrote my true crime. And I've been sitting on it because I think I need to tweak it. Something's
Is this the one about the family?
Yes, the dysfunctional family. That
Yeah, I got a good memory.
Yeah, you do. But anyway, this is
Totally
really
about
great.
that.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Oh, wow. See, I wanted to do that for you guys today. As much as I think it's important to give you what I have to say and for you to connect with each other, which I hope you'll continue to do after this workshop. It's so great for somebody to get the beginnings. And that story stayed with me, Biddy, when you must have told me about that, what, a year ago? Have we known each other a year?
I did. Mm-hmm.
That is great. And did you know you were going to do that, or did it just bubble up?
Or it just came. You mean today, what I wrote?
Just now, yeah.
Yeah, it just came up with this exercise. Thank you, Bonnie.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. Now, what else? Who else got something good today that they'd like to share? Anybody? Did somebody hate the exercise? It is hard to do that because you want to put that judgmental thing down there. Steve, what'd you get?
I just kind of wrote about this idea of selfishness, and it kind of goes back to what you were, as I was writing it, I was thinking about what you said about villains and about people who can be selfish. Do they know they're being selfish versus do they not know they're being selfish? And started thinking about situations where people are selfish and are justified in doing so in their own mind. And so that's kind of the path I was going down. And I started thinking of ways where that could potentially be a story, but
it'll show up though. It'll show up in what you write, your beliefs about that. It may not show up word for word, but how you feel. And that's an interesting topic of selfishness. Do people know they're selfish? And what is selfish? And is selfish bad? What's the opposite of selfish? Selfless? Selfless isn't, yes, Susan.
What about if you, you're saying that that whatever our personal core beliefs are will always sort of turn up in our writing. But what if your protagonist is someone that's completely different from you and doesn't?
Then they show up even more. Then they show up even more. Now, I don't know how this happens. I know it because I've written so much. I've written my whole life. I mean, first publication, I was 19 years old. First writing contest, I was in the 4th grade. I know this. I don't know why. John probably knows why. Because John knows more than I do about this stuff. The more, it's about being in touch with yourself and your beliefs. And the more you're able to create a fictional character, those beliefs flood in. Whereas if you were writing about yourself or about people like you, it's harder. I worked with someone once, she was a newspaper reporter. I worked for McClatchy newspapers for 22 years and got out while the getting was still good because I had a book deal. And this person was I think she was a good enough journalist, but her books were really awful. And she wouldn't listen, she wouldn't take advice. And of course, I was nobody to give advice. I was just an editor then, I wasn't published. But I knew what was wrong with them. And she had one book at a Christmas party, I think it was a mystery, where the protagonist, thank you, John. I'll share that in a minute. Where the protagonist sleeps with her best friend's husband at a Christmas party, I think in the ladies' room or something. It was really dreadful. And I asked her, I said, Kathy, I said, why did you have your character do that? That's not very attractive behavior. And she said, well, because that's what I did. Well, okay. But it's that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a gross example of it. But who you are, what you believe comes through the fictional characters you create. I could give you guys an exercise to write the same story, and each one of you would write it differently. I could tell you who the characters were. John's done this sort of thing. I've done this sort of thing. John just said, I don't know if you already know this writer. You probably do, but the creator of free writing is Peter Elbow. His books, John, I can just have you.
Yeah, they're just about the democratization of writing and getting people out of that state of rumination where they have self-doubt and they're basically writing about themselves.
I didn't know that, John. I don't know that book, so thank you. I will look it up.
He was Ray Bradbury's teacher.
Okay. That in 20,000 word sentence is Bradbury, I think.
Yeah.
Can you put that in the chat, John, so I can write it down?
Sure.
Thanks, John. So, okay, so back to the exercise. Did anybody else get anything in the exercise they want to share with us? I'm not going to make you read them because we don't have the time for that. I'd love it if we did, because we'd get some good stuff. It's very freeing not to have to think about what you're writing down and just getting it down. It's very difficult to do that. on a first round. I'm really proud that Biddy and Cindy both got something to take from it. So this brings us to point of view, and I can't finish without talking about point of view. And that is, can someone define point of view for me? Here's, yeah, thank you. What's point of view? Don't see any heads.
The voice that is speaking in the story.
It's, yeah, it's the, and I wish there were a better word for it, because when we think of point of view, it's at first, like when I first heard of point of view, I didn't get it. It took me about 4 months to get 4 years, I'm sorry, to get point of view. I really didn't understand it. And it was pre-internet days, and it was pre-John Branningham days. And I don't think John Branningham was born yet. And I was, I really, gosh, that may be true, John. And I struggled with understanding what it is. And it's really that whose head you're in a story. And as I said, there's no hard, fast rules, but as a rule, the strength is, unless you're writing very, very, very literary fiction, you want to be grounded in someone's head. You can play with it. You can be the multiple we, you know, you can do all sorts of fun devices. And if this were a longer class, I'd have you do some of that. I did a class once in Fort Bragg where I taught from 8 to noon every morning, and then we wrote every afternoon. It was for 1 whole week. It was really intense. And this is the kind of stuff we did. But for where we are now, I want you to understand that when you write fiction, and Biddy, I'm speaking to you here too, because that's going to be your next thing, I think. Well, the family book, is that true crime, or is that, it's fiction, right?
It's a true story, but I'm fictionalizing it. It was
Okay.
owed to me, and
Yeah, so it's fiction.
Mhm.
So I lost my train of thought here. So it's that character. You pick as few point of view characters as possible. If you can do one, that's great. Usually you may have 2 points of view. It depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell. And some people say, well, how can I just write a book with only one point of view in it? Well, that's how we go through life. How do we process when we go through life? We're only in our own point of view, but we observe, we react. So you may have one point of view. The thing you don't want to do, oh, Evie, my kitten just knocked some stuff over. Well, she'll learn. So, so what you don't want to do is what we call head hopping. And if you're trying to make a point, if you understand point of view and you say, no, this is what I want for this story, then I say go for it and let's see if it works or not. But you don't want, in other words, you don't want to say, Andrew showed up late for class and Bonnie frowned. He knows he can get away with murder with me, she thought. Andrew just wanted to sit in. He knew the early stuff because he'd taken her stupid workshops before. So he had an extra donut on his way. You wouldn't do that because you're in Bonnie's head for part of the scene and you're in Andrew's head at the end of the scene. I didn't want to pick on you, but you're my pet, so I can do that, huh? So so in other words, every scene has to be in someone's head. The fewer the better. If it's a book, the fewer the better, because you don't want to do what I did when I started out and have 18 million point of view characters. Olivia Goldsmith told me, I interviewed Olivia Goldsmith right after the First Wives Club sold. No, that's not true. It was right after the next book sold. And she told me that the big mistake she made was she didn't understand point of view in the First Wives Club, and that she had 11 points of view. That's why she couldn't sell the book. 11. Can you imagine being in 11 different heads in one book? But it sold to film, and that was how she got the book deal. She couldn't sell the book. She couldn't give the book away. And it was because of point of view. So once they had a movie deal, nobody cared. That's kind of how it works, unfortunately, or fortunately for her. So point of view is really, really major. Until you master point of view, you will not master fiction. And again, theme comes through point of view. It's what your character's thinking. So what your character thinks about things may not be what you think about things, which is kind of to address what you're saying, Susan. Your character may be totally unlike you, but what your character thinks about things will be your life theme. You can't help it. It will come out. Do you know why, John, that is? Why who we are comes out? Linda's kitty's too shy. Mine are too stupid, so they don't know. There's only one that knows what a camera is. Do you know why that is, John? That who we are shows up on the page?
Because we're going into our unconscious or subconscious, and it's going to poke its way through. I mean,
That's what Dennis says. That's why that 10-minute exercise I gave you is so powerful, because you're opening up the floodgates and saying, come on in. Now I want to ask you, we're almost at it. We got 5 minutes, right? Okay, I want to ask you, what's the most important thing you learned today? This is important to me to know. Yes, Linda.
So the whole time that you've been talking, I've been trying to apply these principles to what I write, which is memoir.
Which is very much like fiction.
Which is, except that I am the protagonist and it's my point of view.
And your character arc.
Yes. And so I'm thinking about things like, am I an uninteresting character?
No, you're not. I'll answer that. And I've read your work.
And then, what was the other thing? Oh, I was thinking about, the person who's the antagonist in my book. Did I not do a good enough job of making her multi-dimensional? And does she seem too much like a villain instead of a real person?
I would always look at that when we write memoir, because it's so easy. A poet I worked with once who was really good said, anytime you write anything evil or put down, always bring it to yourself first. Always look at yourself first. I try really hard not to do that. And that's a really good thing to look at. And also it's your character arc. So look at how you changed through these experiences, but you're very self-aware. I think that, Cindy, what you had a question?
I recently wrote an essay, and somebody was critiquing it, and she said that my voice is like third person and first person, and I'm just like switching, and I'm really confused by that. And the voices
Okay. So, first person is I, and there's not a thing wrong with I stories are especially good if your character has a quirky voice, or if you have a quirky voice. Those I stories are just fine. Third person is she, he, they. There's nothing wrong with those stories. The story kind of tells you. Present tense is, it's right now. That's kind of a thing people like to do, is present tense. It's hard to maintain for a whole book, but it's doable. Certainly in Flash, it's great. So it's easy for you to look that up though, Cindy. That's real basic stuff. I would say do, again, organically what feels right to you. John, do you have anything to add to that? You're the one that taught me that the first person should be more if the character's quirky.
Yeah, well, the first person should be if you have an extraordinary point of view. And you're then speaking to that extraordinary. If you just have somebody who's sort of dull, then the voice is going to be dull, right?
Well, you better not be dull anyway. If you're a protagonist, you better have something going for you. What else? What's the main thing that you got today? Someone tell me. Edna says, can you write Donna's email? Okay, well, apparently Edna didn't get much. So tell me, what's the most important thing you learned today? Cindy? You have your hand up.
I learned a lot. What I mainly got when I did that fast prompt that you gave us, I wrote down theme, drive, what's the whole in them and want and their voice. So I applied that when I was thinking of writing this really quick story as my bumpers. So that's what I learned.
John's going to share my email with you guys so that if anybody wants to send me up to 1,000 words, and I promise you, Tom, I won't make you wait because I don't want you, getting all frustrated. And because really this writing thing, it's doable. You've seen people here today tell you that they did it. They would have done it. It's about sticking with it. It's about polishing your craft and letting your art do its thing. You already have the art part, and the rest of it is letting your craft do its thing, really polishing your craft, doing the wild stuff like we did today, where you just let yourself go and get the stuff down. I would love this time next year to have there be another Biddy Martin sitting here telling what she did, even if it's Biddy Martin herself. Not to put any pressure on you or anything. I mean, you've got a whole year. I'd like to see you love this, because I believe that writers are given a gift, and that that it's wrong to get a gift and not use it, or to think you don't deserve the gift. And I guess what I'd like to leave you with is that you have this ability, and it's a gift. Not everybody has it. You got chosen for whatever reason to have this. So the fact that you're here, I really appreciate your time. You put a lot of time in today, put a lot of work in here today. If you have personal questions about writing, if you want to send me something, that's fine. If you just have questions about writing, John, you've probably already shared my personal email address, the Bonnie. Yeah, good. That will come straight to me. I really appreciate your time here today. And I want you to know that you're worth it. And that if you think doing the dishes or cleaning the toilet or the oven is suddenly more appealing than getting your butt in that chair, and oops, I wasn't going to swear today. Butt's not really swearing, no, is it, John?
Swearing,
At the end of this recording off. It's not. Nothing's more important than doing the work you were put on earth to do.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
so
you,
glad
Bonnie.
you came. I feel like you're all at my table.
Thank you very
I'm so
much.
happy. I wish you were.
All right, you can just, we don't switch rooms. You can just stay here if you like.
Okay.
Or
I've got to leave. I've got to do something for Larry.
Thank you,
you again,
Bonnie.
you guys. It was great seeing the new folks, and you guys that hang out with me every year. I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
yeah, everybody, you don't have to leave. You can just stay here. Scott Noon Creeley will be up next in about 15 minutes. So, great.
Thank you, John.